Hey guys, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. Now, if I were to ask you guys to think of just one dark witch or wizard, who would you think of? Try to think of one. Got one? Okay. Now, I would expect that the majority of you would immediately think of Voldemort. He was the most recent threat to the wizarding world, and certainly secured his place as one of the most sinister dark wizards in history. Voldemort experimented with the darkest and most twisted forms of magic, even going as far as to split his soul apart in his pursuit of immortality. After Voldemort, I'm going to assume that a good portion of you thought of Grindelwald. Grindelwald, though maybe not quite as purely evil as Voldemort, was certainly evil and a bit twisted in his own right. He was expelled from Durmstrang for experimenting with twisted and dark magic, and would do whatever it took to achieve a global wizarding hierarchy, where witches and wizards would rule over muggles. He tortured, killed, and captured in his pursuit of establishing this hierarchy, all in the name of the greater good. Some of you may have even thought of other witches and wizards like Bellatrix or even Barty Crouch Jr, who's a nutcase. But what I bet a lot of you didn't think of was the dark wizard known as Ekrizdis. Ekrizdis isn't particularly well known, but he certainly marked his place in wizarding history, as he was a practitioner of the worst kinds of dark arts imaginable. The types of magic that he performed and experimented with made Voldemort's Horcrux creation look fairly commonplace. Very little is known about Ekrizdis, other than the fact that he was alive during the 15th century, and that he was evil, pure evil. No one even knows his nationality, and even if it was known, I'm sure no one would want to claim ownership of him. He was that bad. Ekrizdis was the original inhabitant of the island fortress of Azkaban, what we now know as the prison that holds some of the darkest witches and wizards within its walls. While traveling in the 15th century, Ekrizdis stumbled upon the island, which at the time had no infrastructure to speak of. Azkaban gets its name from a mixture of the words Alcatraz, the famous Muggle island prison, and Abaddon, the Hebrew word for place of destruction. When he first arrived, it was just a regular island, but he soon turned it into his own little dark arts experiment. Hoping to keep the location of the island, which was located in the North Sea, a secret, Ekrizdis kicked things off by placing concealment charms on the island, meaning that no one would be able to intentionally find it. After placing the concealment charms on the island, Ekrizdis began his dark arts experiments by luring Muggle sailors to the island, then torturing and eventually murdering them. Before ever stepping foot on the island, Ekrizdis was mad, but after spending some time there, he became totally insane, as he had completely lost touch with reality. He became so wrapped up and enthralled in his experimentation with dark magic that he had lost his mind, and the poor sailors that he lured to the island witnessed it firsthand. In his madness, it has been speculated that Ekrizdis either unwittingly or perhaps intentionally created what we now know to be Dementors. I could describe what Dementors are for you in my own words, but I feel that this quote best sums it up. Dementors are among the foulest creatures that walk this earth. They infest the darkest, filthiest places. They glory in decay and despair. They drain peace, hope, and happiness out of the air around them. Even Muggles feel their presence, though they can't see them. Get too near a Dementor, and every good feeling, every happy memory will be sucked out of you. If it can, the Dementor will feed on you long enough to reduce you to something like itself, soulless and evil. You'll be left with nothing but the worst experiences of your life. And in The Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry's encounter with the Dementor is described in great detail. An intense cold swept over them all. Harry felt his own breath catch in his chest. The cold went deeper than his skin. It was inside his chest. It was inside his very heart. Harry's eyes rolled up into his head. He couldn't see. He was drowning in cold. There was a rushing in his ears, as though of water. He's being dragged downward, the roaring growing louder. And then, from far away, he heard screaming. Terrible, terrified, pleading screams. He wanted to help whoever it was. He tried to move his arms, but couldn't. A thick white fog was swirling around him, inside him.
If a Dementor isn't the product of dark magic, then I don't know what is. And given the fact that Ekrizdis may have crafted these horrific creatures, I think that he is deserving of the crown of the most evil wizard to have ever lived, usurping even Voldemort and Grindelwald. Ekrizdis was a wizard that served as a representative for evil in its purest form. He had no agenda or goal. He didn't want power or money or really anything. He just wanted to torture for the sake of torturing. And to this day, we don't actually know what the extent of the torturing was. We just know that it was horrific. When Ekrizdis finally died, presumably of old age or perhaps a spell going wrong. The concealment charms that he had placed on the island were finally lifted. This is when the British Ministry of Magic first found the island an island full of creatures that they had never seen before, Dementors. It has been reported that the investigative team from the ministry that first went to Azkaban never discussed their complete findings. In fact, they refused to discuss their findings. I can't even begin to imagine what sorts of horrific things went on if every single ministry employee that went there on the initial visit refused to describe what they had seen. The only other magic that I can think of that fits in this category somewhat is the Horcrux creation process, which similarly doesn't have much light shed on it. When Azkaban was first discovered by the ministry, tensions were high, and they were unsure of what to do with the island fortress riddled with dark creatures. Many in authority thought Azkaban an evil place that was best destroyed. Others were afraid of what might happen to the Dementors infesting the building if they deprived them of their home. The creatures were already strong and impossible to kill. Many feared a horrible revenge if they took away a habitat where they appeared to thrive. The very walls of the building seemed steeped in misery and pain, and the Dementors, they were determined to cling to it. Experts who had studied buildings built with and around dark magic contended that Azkaban might wreak its own revenge upon anybody attempting to destroy it. The fortress was therefore left abandoned for many years, a home to continually breeding Dementors. Though it was under much scrutiny initially, when the ministry recognized that they could utilize the island to imprison evildoers, they capitalized on this and began sentencing people to the island fortress. The Ministry of Magic felt that the smaller, existing wizarding prisons that were scattered across the country posed a considerable security risk and put citizens in danger. Thus, Azkaban Prison was born. Though many believe Ekrizdis to be the father of the Dementors, there is a counter-argument, and it involves an old tale featured in Wonderbook, the Book of Spells. In this tale, the origins of the Patronus charm are discussed, and Dementors are mentioned as well. The strange power of the Patronus and its peculiar qualities are well illustrated by the ancient story of a shy, poor orphan boy called Ilias, whose Patronus went down in wizarding history. Ilias lived long ago in a mountain village, which was surrounded by a dense forest in which a dark wizard called Rexidian lived in a black castle guarded by Dementors. These evil, faceless hooded creatures, which cast fear and despondency all around them, suck the very souls from humans whom they succeed in weakening. For many years, Rexidian left the villagers, who were fellow witches and wizards, in peace, and they avoided the part of the forest where his castle was situated. Knowing that Dementors roamed the forest, they took care to teach every new generation the Patronus charm, the only spell that worked against these evil creatures. Many were unable to master the difficult spell, but there had always been just enough Patronuses in the village to stand guard against the Dementors, in case Rexidian ordered an attack. As we can clearly see, Dementors are mentioned, but we still don't know when this tale actually takes place, as it is only described as ancient. Because of the way that it's described, I think that it would be reasonable to assume that it preceded Ekrizdis, but we don't know for certain. We also don't know how long Ekrizdis lived for. He was a dark and twisted wizard, and may have even lived for millennia. Rexidian, the dark wizard of the tale, appears to be able to control Dementors, but this doesn't mean that he created them either, as Dementors have proven themselves to be subservient on occasion. We also don't know how Dementors were created. All we know is that they breed and multiply. The most heavily supported theory for how they breed is that they grow like fungus under conditions of despair, unhappiness, and hopelessness. As long as these things are present within an environment, then the Dementors seem to thrive. What does everyone here think? Who really created the Dementors? Was it Ekrizdis, Rexidian, or someone else altogether? Let me know down in the comment section. Until next time.
You're a wizard, Harry.